What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Roundtable right here on all of our channels, and hopefully everybody is doing good tonight. You probably don't care about the playoffs very much, but we're always here to talk about Mets baseball in our off season and talk about all the stuff that we need to talk about. Because I think the last time we, as a group, talked to each other, Billy Epler was still the GM of the New York Mets. Buck Showalter just basically got quote unquote fired. And it was just in shambles. Every day there was a new story coming out. And, recently Francisco Lindor had surgery. And who knew he had a bone spur? And Pete Alonso, more trade rumors and changing agents and all that fun stuff. So we're going to get right into it, guys. We're going to go around the round table and say what up to everybody. And then we're going to get into the topics of the night. So just so you know, guys, there's off-season dates throughout the off-season that are on the screen right now. So if you're looking for when the hell these dates are popping up, and obviously the interesting ones will be the qualifying offers that are going to be popping up after the World Series 5 days after. So that's going to be very interesting to look at. So we're going to say what up to Hayden. How you doing, buddy? What's up?
Yeah, what's going on, everyone? Mets Talk with Hayden is the name. Hopefully everyone is doing well. Hopefully most of you guys know me by now. Mets Talk with Hayden, live streams, videos, news analysis, farm system analytics, all that great stuff. I did do 2 videos this past week, actually, going over the Mets season recap, the good, the bad, and the ugly, a little bit of a breakdown, and then kind of the front office moves with David Stearns, Billy Epler, and Buck Showalter, kind of giving a vague take on it. So those 2 videos are out. If you could check that out, appreciate it. Otherwise, good to be back here for another Roundtable podcast. Definitely, with the playoffs going on now, the Mets are not in it, unfortunately, but we do have a lot of good stuff to talk about leading up to the offseason and then throughout the offseason, of course.
Absolutely. So check out those videos that Hayden posted over the last couple of days. Nelson, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
Hold on, I had to get myself off mute. Sorry about that. Doing all right. Just hanging in there, waiting for the World Series to be over. To be honest, I just want to get the hot stove season started. Amish Country Mets fan here. For those of you that don't know, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And good to be here with you guys to talk a little baseball and yes, it's like you said, it's been since Billy was still GM the last time we talked. So this should be an interesting conversation here.
Yeah. All right. So that's Nelson. Chris, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
What up, everyone? CP New York Sports. Appreciate you guys having me on. As always, Rob hosting. Good to be talking ball again with the boys. Interesting couple of series we got going on. I'm sure we'll talk about it just briefly, but a lot of Mets topics to get into. I would never have thought that I'd be so excited to talk the Mets offseason and then the Giants pull an absolute heartbreaking first 6 games. So here we are back at square one. At least I have the Rangers to look forward to. They're kicking off as we speak here. So a lot of New York sports coming up, so definitely subscribe to the channel. Definitely appreciate it. Trying to get to that 150 mark and been really busy. Good to catch up back with you guys. I know Nelson, us doing Interstate, we didn't get to do it last week. It's been a hectic week. So good to be back finally on and let's get it going. Let's get it rocking.
Absolutely, yes. The Rangers are having a home opener tonight against the Coyotes, I believe. So that's going to start, like you said, just now. And we're going to get right into the postseason talk. Very, very little because I think we probably can all care less as long as it's probably not the Phillies. I think we'll all be happy with the outcome. Besides Jacob deGrom probably getting a ring if the Rangers win, which would be unfortunate.
Participation award.
Yeah, well, Scherzer participated too. Kind of. He celebrated in the locker room, so I guess that counts. But yes, Scherzer will be pitching in Game 3 for the Rangers, which is going to be very interesting, and I do hope he gets lit up because he was garbage for all of us. So, very interesting to see the Diamondbacks, as shocking as they were. I mean, they destroyed the Dodgers, which listen, I have no love for the Dodgers, so the Dodgers are the other choke artist that are in the National League along with the Atlanta Braves. And yes, Brave fans, I know you already got on me because you sent me tons of messages throughout the weeks. Yeah, you are chokers. I mean, it just reminds me of the 90s all over again. Division titles and one world championship, and that's probably all you're going to get. And yes, you do have a world championship. I know. I don't. We don't. I know. But it's still nice to laugh in you guys' faces because you were a bunch of crybabies, especially Brave fans, with Acuna not speaking to the media after they lost. The Braves, all of a sudden, they don't hit home runs. And guess what? Their offense is not as good. And I can care less about all the injuries they had because they're not the only team in the playoffs that had injuries and did their job. So I'm just going to go start with Hayden there about just the playoffs in general, not even just the NLCS and ALCS. Yeah, I mean, it was probably music to everybody's ears and eyes to see the Braves and Dodgers go down in the fashion they did. Hayden, so what do you think about that? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, playoffs have been interesting. Not much, I will say, not much of a fight. I feel it's kind of just been very lopsided. It's always just immediately whatever team wins the first game, it's pretty much a sweep. But besides that, Dodgers going out in that fashion, not surprised. That's kind of been them for the last 10 years, minus Cupcake 2020. But really good to see the wild card teams. I mean, it comes to the point where, just putting the Mets in this for the few times I could, the Mets and the Mets don't need to be better than the Braves. The Mets just need to get in. I mean, look at it. All these wild card teams, minus the Astros, are in it. Phillies and D-backs, they didn't win the division, and they're in it. Rangers didn't win the division, they're in it. So, I mean, it goes to show you that, it's really the wild card seems to have the upper hand. Maybe it's the days off, just being fresh, who knows? But, I mean, it goes to show you the division doesn't really mean much. D-backs are looking good. I mean, that Zach Gallen's been great. Yeah. Whatever his name is, whatever his name is, he's been looking good. D-backs pitching has been great. I mean, Corbin Carroll's been huge. That offense has been huge. You go to the Phillies, and a lot of people disagree with me, but the Phillies are a good team. I mean, 90 wins a year, making it to the NLCS World Series back-to-back years. I mean, I would gladly take that from the Mets at the bare minimum. That's great. Phillies are a good ball club. Look over to the American League that's still left. Rangers, Astros, that's an interesting ALCS. And, I think it's been an interesting playoff. Obviously when it comes to the Braves, yeah, I think that's kind of the most happiest thing the Mets fans can have right now. But Braves, it's unfortunate they couldn't make it that far. I mean, they were a team that had 104 wins, all of Matt Olson's homers, MVP Acuna, and they just, collapsed again. I mean, Strider choked. He's a choke artist in the playoffs, unfortunately. He's 0-4 in the playoffs, sub-5 ERA, sub-2 whip. Just Philly just teed off home run. Philly was the team that was hitting all the home runs, not the Braves. So, Morgan Wallen may say 98 Braves, but I'm here saying 23 Braves. You want to quote that, go for it, guys. But, yeah, I mean, playoffs have been interesting this year. We'll see how it goes. I'd like it to be Astros, D-backs. I'd kind of like to see the Astros win it all, but looking like Phillies, Rangers. So we'll see.
Well, yeah, listen, I mean, with the Braves again, I mean, they're gonna have the MVP again. They didn't hit home runs, and they're the same team they were. And again, expectations matter, right? When you're in the regular season and you're facing a lot of fourth and fifth starters and garbage pitchers, you're going to hit a lot of home runs. But when you constantly face your best bullpen arms, the best starting pitchers on those teams, well, those home runs are not going to be coming at as much as they are. And the Braves are what they are. They're a team that hits a lot of home runs, and they're choke artists. That's all what they were. 2021, they had no expectations, right? They were going to make trades, be sellers at the trade deadline in 2021. If they didn't beat the Mets in that series, they probably would have sold, but they didn't, and they made the right moves. But there was no expectations. The last 2 years, 205 wins in back-to-back seasons altogether, and they choked in the first round. And yes, the Phillies have their number, but come on. Like, I agree with you, Hayden. So, Nelson, what do you think of the playoffs so far?
I'll be honest, I haven't really been that interested in it. It's hard for me to get into it when just no juice and the Mets aren't in it. The Braves Philly series was kind of fun to watch, but it's two teams I hate, so it's not like I was rooting for the Phillies, but it's not like I'm excited that the Phillies are moving on either. So um I hope the D-backs can find a way to beat them, and because I don't particularly want to see Philly in the World Series again. Um the American League, I don't necessarily care, although I'd rather see the Astros than the Rangers just because I don't want to see Max get another ring. Um, Jake gets whatever. I mean, it's not that he really deserves a ring for having one start, but he'll get one if they do win it. And the Braves, like you said, the Braves are the Braves, man. The Braves fans don't want to hear it, but they're choke artists. This is yes, you got one World Series, you got, and it's one more than us. Whoop-de-doo. You win the freaking division this many times and over again. You should have more to show for it than first round exits and every year. Like
Yeah.
it's the '90s all over again. It's just that's what the Braves do. They're crying, whiny babies. Their fans cry and whine. That whole debacle with the Attaboy Harper stuff, that was ridiculous. That was a joke. Like have some self-respect, people. Like, oh, whining about the media. Like, dude, you should know there's cameras and microphones all over people are gonna pick up on stuff like what, and then you can't back it up. That like the reporter, one of the reporters that was in there said, she's like, all that's showing me is that you don't believe that you can beat a motivated Bryce Harper because you egged him on and you didn't want it to get out, and he basically shoved it up your ass. Sorry for the language, but I mean it's what he did. So yeah, I mean it's whatever. I like I said, I'm not too excited. The Astros look like they're trying to make a comeback here, 5-4 now.
Here goes Chapman again.
Yeah, Chapman. I know. We'll get into offseason free agent targets. I guess Chapman's name has come up. I want no part of that. But yeah, man. It as long as the Phillies don't win, I really don't care that much.
Yeah, I do agree with that. So, Chris, what do you think of the postseason so far?
Oh man, I've been trying to stay in it, stay up to date. Hopefully, just the Mets give us something and they stay in it, till this time next year. Because that Padres series, I mean, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But that atmosphere was electric. So, yeah, I'm happy the Phillies got the job done. Now it's time for the D-backs to get the job done themselves and just eliminate any Mets fans' worry. I know it's sad that it has to come down to us rooting against these guys in the playoffs, but it is what it is at this point. The whole Orlando Arcia, I mean, he was crying. Travis d'Arnaud was crying in the locker room, talking about these reporters going into the clubhouse and releasing their quote unquote, quotes in their sanctuary, quote unquote, of the locker room. It's like, this is the reporters' jobs. They're in there for a reason. They're there. They know that they're there. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know if you guys saw, but Bryce Harper trotting around, the bases and just staring Arcia down, rounding second, is like the coldest picture I've seen in a while in terms of a baseball, just like snippet. Like that is frameable right there. But yeah, I mean the Phillies are the Phillies. They're still scumbags. They're still dirtbags. Obviously, we all saw them singing their chants, and it's always F the Mets. After they won the series, and as it should be, man, it's a rivalry. They still got the Mets on their minds, and it's not like the Mets are bad and everyone's gonna forget about them. Highest payroll in baseball, that carries some weight. I know people don't really care about that, but it carries some weight at the end of the day. So, yeah, I mean, I'd love to see, just a switch up, maybe the Rangers D-backs for once. Shout out everybody in the chat. People giving their opinions on what we're seeing in the postseason. Good turnout. So love the discourse in the chat. But yeah, I'd love to see the Rangers and D-backs. I don't really care for Scherzer and DeGrom and them getting rings, whatever that is. That is what it is. But I think that those are two respectable teams. The D-backs just being in this position with how young that roster is very impressive. And I just nothing to say for that, but hats off to them. So Trying to stay in it. Hopefully we get the best outcome and it's the Phillies not winning a World Series because that would be brutal. But I do think that the Phillies roster, and I've always thought this, I think their roster is better on paper than a lot of people have been giving them credit for. And they turn it on when it matters. Like on paper, the Phillies roster is awesome. Their lineup and their pitching is, pretty spectacular. Like they are a complete team. And I think Rob Thompson is a hidden gem that they found, obviously, when the whole Joe Girardi situation went down. That's like the best possible guy you could have brought up to lead that ball club. So they turn it on when it matters in the playoffs. They have experienced vets in there for a reason. They brought in Trey Turner for a reason. He's been heating up. I mean, think about it. Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Real Muto, Castellanos, like that's on an unreal 1-5. So not surprised that they beat the Braves, but yeah, really funny to see the Braves choke. You guys said it, like Nelson and Rob literally said it weeks ago as we were nearing the end. Like this is a classic, it's a classic makeup of the Braves going in, having a 104-win season, just absolutely being, lights out on offense, all these home runs, and then just going to choke like the 90s Braves. So that's exactly what happened too. So happy to see it. But I'm ready to start talking some Mets, so let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I agree with you. And I said it for a while, and I always fight with Brave fans about this. The Braves choke. When there's expectations, they choke. You can't have that many divisions and have one World Series to show for it over like a 10 to 12-year span. You had in the 90s, you had the best pitching staff basically in baseball, and now you had the most potent offense in baseball, and you still choke. So, at some point, the excuses have got to stop, and you got to do the job. Listen, the battle-tested Phillies are a team that, they're a team that is a work-hard dog type of mentality, and the Braves are not. And you know what? Let's be honest, the Mets are not, right? The Mets are that mentally soft team that we seen last year in September and in the Padres series and this year. And you know what? Kudos to the Phillies. I don't like saying it, but it's true. So let's just get right into the Mets offseason that's going to be coming up in a couple of weeks. So we talked about free agent talk. We talked about a couple of weeks ago about certain players, and I wanted to broaden the horizon a little bit. And watching the Phillies and watching Aaron Nola and how good he's been with the Phillies in the playoffs the last 2 seasons, I think is actually something that I think we should revisit when it comes to Aaron Nola. I'm not a big fan of Aaron Nola, but in the big games, especially in the postseason, he's pitched well. And I do wonder when it comes to like offseason free agent targets with the rotation. We all know about Yamamoto. I think everybody's going to agree on that part. But to look at situations, because there was a report that came out, I believe yesterday, I like listening to other sports radio stations, and I was listening to Philly. The Braves offered Nola a 4 or 5 year deal, and he wanted an 8-year deal of $200 million, around that. So, I mean, I get what the Phillies are doing 4 or 5 years. I think that's where I would have went to, but to go for like 8-year deal that he's looking for is kind of insane. So I'm going to start with you, Hayden, when it comes to free agent targets, specifically with the rotation, and then you can talk about other position players or wherever else position player wise. But when it comes to the rotation in general, free agent targets that you would want and that you want to stay away from going into the offseason for the Mets.
Yeah, so I think the most important position to address is pitching. It's as simple as that. We saw how vital and important pitching was last year, and that was pretty much the reason the season panned out the way it did. All pitching, whether it's starting rotation or the bullpen. The whole bullpen is in shambles. I mean, emphasizing on the bullpen for a couple of seconds, minus Diaz and Rayleigh, there's not really much else you got to trust there. I have no problem in building this super bullpen. I know Josh Hader, yeah, that'd be a little bit of an issue. I mean, one thing of the money, but two of, would you put him in the 8th inning spot? Would that be an issue? Bullpen's kind of an annual thing where you address year to year. And I think the Mets now having a little bit more of a competent analytical department, David Stearns, more of a competent guy when it comes to getting really good relievers, really good pitching for smaller deals. And I think David Stearns is the prime example of that. maybe he could help build a better bullpen because this Mets bullpen was horrible, and I don't even think you really need at this rate the Diaz's and Haters of the world. You just don't need Steven Nagosic and Dominic Leones of the world. I mean, if you go out there and looking at the screen right now, who's this dude? LeBlanc, whatever his name is for the Rangers. I can't even see. I don't have my contacts in. I mean, it's someone is like that you need. So I think the bullpen's going to be very important. But starting pitching, I mean, your rotation consists of what? Senga, Quintana, and 3 mystery men. No. So there's a lot of guys you need to go after. A couple guys, Yamamoto's been trending. I think he could be a good addition to this Mets team. He absolutely went off in Japan this year, put up great numbers. So, and if he could adjust just like Senga did his first year, I mean, that could be lethal. Eduardo Rodriguez does have an opt-out. He could be an interesting candidate. Nice southpaw there. My only concern with, I would say Rodriguez is the injury concern, but otherwise he's going to have plenty of suitors around the league, and he's a great guy, put up great numbers, give you innings, nice lefty. Jordan Montgomery, watching the Rangers game now, I mean, he's completely underrated. That dude's going to get paid this offseason. Has been quietly one of the most consistent starters in baseball, probably since 2 years ago, 2021. Bounced around a little bit, and I mean, he really has been going off pretty well. I believe he doesn't have a qualifying offer, so he won't have any draft compensation attached to him. So that'll be good. So that's kind of a benefit there. I've heard Blake Snell being thrown around. I'd be a little questionable about that. He's having a good year in his contract year. I've never seen that before. Mark Stroman. So Snell's a guy I'd be a little bit curious on. Trying to think of pitchers that are free agents. Giolito, I would stay away from. He's a disaster the last couple years. Yeah. Sonny Gray, I believe he's a free agent, right? I'm looking at the free agent list right now. Sonny Gray, he is a free agent. He's been pretty well. He could be a decent arm that I think the Mets can try and go after. Dominated in Minnesota, absolutely came out of nowhere. I know that he had a couple issues with like the in-game management of the pitchers in Minnesota. I think that was a whole managerial dispute that he had. So maybe he'll want to leave Minnesota, go to a new team. So he's definitely another arm you could go after. I was going to say Julio Urias, but I think that facade is about over. Yeah, I mean, pitching is the main priority. Offensively, yeah, there could be a couple names out there. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani. I think that's kind of the big one that people are going to say, but everyone's going to say that. Really just big bats. I would like some power bats or just above average bats because, we're going to talk about it more. I don't think the Mets are going to be able to trust guys like Marte. You're going to have the 4 baby Mets in for another year, so maybe getting Mauricio to play like how he's expected. Maybe that could be your free agent signing essentially, but you still don't want to bring in the same exact lineup as last year offensively because we saw that last year and it didn't work out. So I wouldn't be against them, whether it's a big bat, power bat, whether it's Jock Peterson. JD Martinez, I know he's another year older, but look how he did in LA this year. He balled off. I like JD Martinez is one guy. Essentially some just power bats. You really need more protection in that lineup. And I think that's really going to be the main keynote for this offseason is pitching and power bats. And that's David Stearns' specialty. That's what he's been known for producing in Milwaukee. So, we'll see how this offseason goes. But those are just a couple names that I would spit out there. And I think those are all realistic pitchers and a few bats that the Mets could realistically go after.
Yeah, you brought up a good one in Jordan Montgomery, who's shown he can pitch in the playoffs as well. And, you need those battle-tested guys. And it wouldn't hurt to have another lefty in the rotation either. So Montgomery's a good one. So, Nelson, what do you got when it comes to the rotation or bullpen or any type of free agent targets you want to talk about coming to the Mets that the Mets should target this offseason?
I'm heavy on these Japanese guys, man. Yamamoto, obviously. But you got Shota, Managa, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Then you got that Cuban guy, that Yariel Rodriguez, that's pitching in Japan as well. I like him. Obviously, Eduardo Rodriguez is a name I'm interested in. I've said that for a while now. Um, I think Montgomery's pitching himself into too much. Like, he's going to get paid way more than I want to pay him. He's not, to me, he's not an ace. He doesn't deserve ace type money. But because of the way he's pitching in the playoffs and the season he has, I think he's going to get more than he's going to get overpaid. I don't like Aaron Nola. Don't trust him. Blake Snell, contract year. I don't like it, man. The last time he had a dominant Cy Young year, he fell off the face of the earth right the year after. I could see that happening once again. I just mainly I'm really interested in these guys from Japan, man. If we could get one or two of those guys, I'd be very happy. Obviously, we need at least 2 arms. I don't know if we're going to go strictly free agent route on that. We might do some trades, which I see we're going to talk about as well. For the bullpen, a Robertson reunion interests me. I like that. The results aren't necessarily there, but I like his stuff. The Fujinami out of, again, another I like Japanese guys, I guess. Another guy, I think he ended up getting traded to the Orioles for the second half this year. I like his stuff. Joe Jimenez, pitcher of the Braves. I like his stuff as well. Those kind of guys. I'm looking for guys that aren't going to break the bank. Obviously, the bullpen is such a crapshoot. Guys are really good one year, and then the next year they stink. So you got to kind of be careful about throwing out like big money. Hader just doesn't seem realistic to me that he's going to command a ton. And then you have the whole issue of does he want to even set up, which I don't think he would.
Yeah.
I'll save it for the trade target thing, but I got a couple bullpen ideas on the trade market.
Okay.
But yeah, those are the guys I'm interested in. It's hard to know what we're going with. I mean, we don't even have right now. We don't have a manager. We don't have a general manager. I mean, obviously Stearns can do the job, but it'll be interesting to see like how aggressive we're going to be on the free agent market because it's hard to tell. As far as bats are concerned, I mean, like Hayden said, I mean, Shohei's the obvious one. Like, you plug him in at DH and that solves a ton of problems. But if he's not willing to come here, then I don't know. There's a lot of options. It's just, again, I feel like I don't know. I feel like we're going to be more aggressive in the trade market than we are in the free agent market. I don't know why but I just really think that that's going to be we're going to be looking to trade some of these pieces that we have. We have so many guys that play the same position. Something's got to give. I just feel like we're going to be aggressive in the trade market.
Yeah, I do agree with you. And yeah, we'll talk about the trades targets in a little bit. But I agree with you. I think the trade market's going to be a lot more prominent this offseason than free agent. I know they're going to get free agents, but I think the trade market, I think if you see 1 or 2 big trades, I think probably will go down. And I think, again, you can't bring everybody on the MLB roster. Somebody has to get traded. You can get better by those trades. And I think that was Billy Epler's plan. I would be shocked if that wasn't even David Stearns' plan all along, making Billy Epler run the situation that was going on in the trade deadline. I think Stearns was actually communicating, even though that's a little bit of the wrong way to go about it. But I do think that was the plan all along. So, Chris, what do you got with the free agents targets that you'll be looking at this offseason?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, we've already gone over time and time and time again, our 1A tier 1 options. We're talking about Yamamoto, Ohtani, all those guys who we've been talking about for weeks. So let's say Nelson is right and the Mets decide to go, more trade heavy this season, and Ohtani's off the board. Say they grab Yamamoto. Obviously, you need more arms anyways. You're not just going to stop at Yamamoto. You need to fill multiple rotation spots. I'm looking at maybe some of these tier B guys, right? Tier B, tier C that help you fill in the roster. One guy I look at that can fill a back end of the rotation spot and honestly could be probably a strong 3 or 4 on any given team in the league. Out of Minnesota, had great years in Cincinnati is Tyler Mahle. I like him a lot. I like his sample size. That's one guy that I would 110% do my due diligence on if I were the New York Mets. Another guy, he struggled very, very, very mightily. I'm talking about for the bullpen. He struggled very mightily. I think that the destination he chose in free agency, I think it was free agency, wasn't really great, but a familiar face that can fill a need for this bullpen. Obviously, the club exercise option is going to be exercised on Brooks Raley, but you talk about maybe a reunion with Aaron Loup, who's had a good sample size to his resume. Outside of obviously this season, he's got over a 6 ERA. But before that, we all know about that sub 1 ERA he had with the Mets the previous season. So that's another name I'm looking at. A guy that intrigues me, especially if the third base position starts to become a little bit wary with Brett Beatty, and maybe they don't trust Ronnie Mauricio very extensively out there defensively. A guy by the name of Jeimer Candelario from the Cubs. I think he's a good bat, and he's those tier B guys that probably the Cubs will look to retain. But if the Mets can snag him, he's one of those guys that has good veteran presence, has a good sample size. So I'm looking at these guys like that have good sample size. They're not your starstruck guys. Like, we're not going to be starstruck by these signings, right? But they're solid guys to fill in the positions that the Mets inevitably need in terms of depth pieces. Couple other names I like. Struggled the last 2 seasons, but he has this sort of aura with the Mets and the fans. Is if the Mets do want like that full-time lefty DH, please do not bring back Vogelback. I saw something on Twitter asking if we're going to bring Daniel Vogelback back. Please stop. There's a guy by the name of Jesse Winker who has an extensive past with the Mets fan base. I know he struggled the last, Mr. Hello, Jesse Winker. He could be probably a cheap signing because he struggled the past 2 seasons, but we saw what his days in Cincinnati and what he produced. That's one guy. I was a proponent for Jock Peterson back last season. Obviously, he inevitably wound up with the Giants again, struggled a little bit, only had 15 home runs. I think he was hitting in the 230s, but we all know he can produce as well. I think, one of those guys that's going to fly under the radar, which I really don't think he should, especially with the situation now in the Marlins in flux with the GM, and we'll talk about, her in a second. But Jorge Soler, he's inevitably going to decline that club option with the Marlins. He's a big power bat. You can go and fill in for the everyday DH spot too. So I think we see that the Mets might get a guy like Yamamoto. They might get a guy or two on the A tier wish list, but you got to start thinking about who those tier B, sorry, I'm fumbling my words, tier B guys are moving forward. I think Tyler Mahle headlines that, but everyone that I just named, it's not going to wow the Mets fan base. And I know that, these signings get announced, Mets fans are going to go crazy. Like, seriously, we're signing XYZ, like Jeimer Candelario, what is this? But like, if you take a look at it and these guys' sample sizes in the league, they're solid veteran options. They have a good sample size over the last 4 or 5 years, and they can produce, those wins where you really need them, especially with the Mets. Like, this is a roster that really is actively under reconstruction if you think about it. Like, in every facet, this Mets roster is going to need to be reconstructed in terms of providing a stability and support around the young guys coming up. So the Mets and David Stearns are really in a unique position to sort of build that. Obviously, they're stuck with a guy like Marte, presumably, right? They're not going to try to find a trade candidate because I'm not sure who in their right mind is going to trade anything worth, a value for Starling Marte. But we'll see what happens with McNeil. But, obviously, like, Nelson said, the Japanese guys coming out, obviously, we found a gem in Kodai Senga. Yamamoto is highly speculated, to be one of the Mets' top targets. So we'll see what happens there. But I don't like to have these conversations now that we're actually in the offseason surrounding the certainties. I don't like to talk uncertainties in terms of these tier A guys. I want to talk about those guys that are flying under people's radars, right? And I think that Mahle, Candelario, a guy like Winker, even bringing Loup back, David Robertson, I think he's 100% a candidate to come back to fill that eighth inning again. I know he struggled for the Marlins down the stretch this season, but having him back and him producing what he produced for the Mets this season, ahead of Edwin Diaz, who's coming back, is just going to build this bullpen. And Hayden's right. It's an annual basis that you need to revamp these bullpen guys. Because we cannot have the Drew Smiths of the world, the Steven Nagosics of the world out there in key situations anymore. It just cannot happen. So I think the Mets have a good foundation with Rayleigh and Diaz. Bring Robertson back. That's another piece of the puzzle. I don't trust an Adam Ottavino, so they're going to need to add at least one or two more guys in there from my judgment. So that's all I got. I just wanted to bring a different perspective. Maybe some of those tier B guys. I keep messing that up. But yeah, that's what I got in terms of free agents.
Yeah, I think the tier B guys is very interesting when you brought up, because that's the foundation of the team, right? You got your core, and then the foundation pieces that really are the ones that really put a full roster together, and that helps with the depth. And I think why the Mets were so good in 2022 was because of their depth. When people went down, other people stepped up, and then tier B guys matter. And you talked about Malley, you talked about Aaron Loup, who was a guy that, was great for the Mets, struggled with the Angels. I think he's the type of guy that likes that craziness of New York, and I think would just suit him well to come back here and pitch well. And he's, he'll be like the 7th, 8th inning guy. Robertson, I just think that he lost all motivation after he got traded from the Mets. I don't think he wanted to get traded, and I just think he, not saying he wasn't trying, but I just think he just lost all his motivation when he went to the Marlins, and I think that's why he was so bad. So let's get to the trade targets, guys. Hayden, we're going to start with you. Trade targets. I think, we've heard about Juan Soto. We heard about, a couple of other things. We talked about pitchers earlier, Dylan Cease. I don't think Corbin Burns is going to be traded, my top guy, because Woodruff is going to be out for the season, and I doubt the Brewers, unless they believe they're going to be in, in rebuild mode, considering they keep on losing in the playoffs in the first round. Maybe they actually would trade Corbin Burns, but I think it would be shocked if they would with Woodruff down. But what do you think about trade targets that you think? Because I do think the Mets are going to do some trades in the offseason. So what type of targets you'll be looking at for the trade target for the Mets?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously the Mets bolstered up their farm system quite a lot. So, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to make a couple of trades during the offseason. I wonder if they're going to make, huge trades. I'm talking, Juan Soto caliber, Corbin Burns caliber, or small, minor. That's on the wall. Small, minor, bullpen arm trades, something like that. That's going to be of question. People have called me a prospect hugger in the past, and that's fine. I think it really depends what you get out of it. I mean, I'm hearing Soto traded to the Mets. Okay. I mean, I'm personally more kind of curious to seeing guys go to free agency in that regards, but it's something to explore. I guess it just comes down to, are you going to be willing to give up Lisandro Acuna, Ryan Clifford, one of the 4 baby Mets at minimum? I mean, that's really going to be the question. As of right now, I don't really think the Mets are going to make any massive trades. I'm talking like Soto or Burns. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see more, I guess just kind of Brooks Raley was a trade, right?
Yeah.
Brooks Raley caliber trades. I wouldn't be surprised if the Mets do that. I mean, I would imagine if you're going to trade, it's going to be for pitching predominantly. So, trading for relievers is kind of a very interesting thing, big risk thing too. When it comes to trades, there's really no one that stands out like crazy. It's hard. A lot of the trade, a lot of the teams that would trade in the past are doing well. Teams like the D-backs, teams kind of like the Pirates are playing better. And I think they'd be a little bit, more complex to trade with during this offseason. Yeah, you could trade with Oakland, you could trade with Kansas City. Who do you want from there? I mean, so we're going to have to wait and see. I think predominantly a good amount of the Mets offseason is going to come from free agency. and then just what they have internally. But I wouldn't be surprised if they make, the Brooks Raley caliber trades. I'm not expecting any massive trades, but who knows? Maybe I'll be completely wrong.
Yeah, and it's funny when you talk about trades, like especially during the Steve Cohen era. Like, there's been trades that happened with the Mets, like the Lindor trade.
They're
came
not
out of
expected
nowhere.
though.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Chris Bassett trade. I don't think anybody heard of that until it actually happened. And I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see one trade that might be like the mid-level trade that might bolster a bullpen or rotation that we might not going to hear a lot of, and it just goes down. But I agree with you. Hayden believes that it's not going to be a lot of. They're not going to make a big trade, but those mid-level trade. And I think Altuve. Oh no, he did it. All right, he just popped it up. Sorry, I just saw it real quick in the corner of my eye. All right, guys. So yeah, I we'll see how it goes when it comes. Hayden believes it's going to be like a middle tier type of trade. Nelson, what do you think? Do you think there's going to be a big trade, or what type of targets you'll be looking at this offseason?
I've said it before. I feel like Stearns is going to try to make a statement. These new GMs, president of baseball operations, what have you, they usually try to make some noise with a move. It's hard to say whether that's going to be a free agent move or a trade. In his past, he's made some big trades. He likes to wheel and deal, so I could see him making a big deal for sure. It's hard to know. It's hard to just, like I said before with the free agents, it's hard to know what the mentality is going to be going with the franchise with not having a GM yet, not having a manager yet. There's a lot of questions on the board, but there's quite a few guys that I'd be interested in. The White Sox are a dumpster fire. They might be looking to tear things down. They might not be. Who knows? But Luis Robert is a guy I love. If Juan Soto isn't a target or if he costs too much, I don't know that Robert might cost just as much, to be honest. His issue is his health. He was able to stay healthy this year, and he was phenomenal. I don't know that the White Sox will necessarily move him, but like I said, they're a dumpster fire. They got a new management team coming in, so it'll be interesting to see what they do there. A name that we were tied to this season from the Cardinals, Tyler O'Neill. I know he had some issues with the manager over there. He's an interesting target. He could play outfield. He could DH. Paul Blackburn from the A's could be a solid back of the rotation arm. We like to trade with the A's for whatever reason, it seems. So I could see something like that going down. They're always looking to offload pieces, especially guys that are going to cost any amount of money. The Pirates, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to unload some dudes. They don't like to pay anybody either. My guy for the bullpen that would be a target would be David Bednar. I'd love to get Bednar in as an eighth inning guy. How realistic that is, I don't know. But he would, if they're putting him on the market, I would definitely be calling them up for that. Yeah. Mitch Keller's an interesting arm. Could be a solid rotation arm. I don't trust him that much, but if you could get him relatively cheap, I wouldn't mind him as like a middle of the rotation guy. Obviously Shane Bieber. The Guardians have been rumored to deal him in the past. He's had his issues. He hasn't looked as great. Didn't look as great this year, but he's had a solid career. He could bolster the rotation for sure. Juan Soto's the obvious one, but who knows there? That's going to probably cost a ton. The other names I had were Austin Meadows from the Tigers. He had an awful year, but in the past he's looked good. They could be looking to unload him. He would be a solid outfield depth guy. Kendall Graveman could be traded from I believe he plays for the Astros now, actually. So those are the names that are on my radar right now. Like I said, things could change. Who knows what Stearns' outlook is, but it'll be interesting. There's going to be a lot of wheeling and dealing going on, and I just want the freaking playoffs to be over so we can get it started.
Yeah, make sure we do a lot of content doing all that fun stuff in the off season. So So far, Hayden talked about mid-level trades. Nelson says Stern's going to make a statement trade this offseason. Thinks he want to put a stamp on this team right away. So, Chris, what do you got when it comes to offseason targets trade-wise for the Mets? What do you think, and what do you think the Mets are going to do?
Yeah, I like Nelson's idea of Bednar a lot. I think that Pirates probably will be in the mix. They're always in the mix of trading somebody that has value to them to get some assets in return. I think they started the season off strong, but I don't think they're going to put anything special together in terms of a competitive roster to make the playoffs. So look out for him. I don't know what the Nationals and the Mets' relationship is, and I know the Nationals, I guess, are getting a little bit closer to sort of putting together a respectable roster, but they got some guys that can definitely help the New York Mets. And I know it's pretty rare to see in-division trades, but they got a couple of relievers there, Hunter Harvey and Kyle Finnegan, that can do the Mets a lot of justice. They got Lane Thomas as well, who I absolutely love, man. I watch Lane Thomas play a lot, and he's a stud. So a familiar face, Brandon Drury could be a target as well to bring back super utility guy. He's always hitting in the 260s, 270s range. So don't sleep on him. I know Max Kepler was thrown out there as well. Some of these lower tier guys, and I know I keep saying these lower tier guys because I know that the Juan Sotos of the world is someone that I said it on this podcast, I think, was it 3 weeks ago? That Juan Soto, if we had to get anybody, I'd say Juan Soto is my top guy that I'd like to see the Mets land this offseason. But if that's not feasible, and I'm sure it's gonna take a lot. And it's funny because we actually discussed like a Pete Alonso, if that situation went haywire, Pete Alonso for Juan Soto swap. Obviously not 1-for-1, but that'd be just an absolute blockbuster deal to happen. But that's obviously, I don't think that's realistic. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of options for the Mets in terms of the bullpen and to sort of bolster that 6 through 9 in the lineup. But I'm not really sure exactly how feasible it is to trade in division, to be honest with you. I'm looking at these teams like the White Sox. We don't know if they're going to blow it up, like Nelson said. He talked about Robert. I mean, you got Eloy Jimenez there as well that could be potentially offloaded. There's a lot of options. When you take a look at the trade candidates for this offseason, there's a lot of options. I know that Bleacher Report had on one of their lists Logan Gilbert. Maybe the Seattle Mariners are looking to sort of find another bat because Teoscar Hernandez didn't work out like they thought he would. So they might, ship Logan Gilbert off, another starting pitcher on the same wavelength as Tyler Mahle, same caliber guy that you can fill in, slot in behind a Yamamoto, presumably, if that deal does go through, and hopefully it does. So a lot of options. I think that there's a lot of candidates that David Stearns will have to do his due diligence on. This is why they pay him the big bucks. This is why he's the second highest paid, Pobo in the league to do this job and to do it thoroughly. And, we'll talk about the GM here next to sort of, I guess, start putting this all together in terms of what this offseason could look like. But I just really think that we all know that the Mets are going to be on these top tier bats. I think someone said it, Mr. G. He loves how much I say sample size. So maybe I'll say a couple more times. He takes a couple more shots. But he also said that we need a hitter behind Pete Alonso. That's what we thought we were getting in Carlos Correa. And, the deal fell through for better or for worse. Judgment's up to you, Mets fans. But we do need a guy that can provide some protection in the lineup for Pete. We've been needing that for a while. It's not going to be Starling Marte. It's not going to be Jeff McNeil. So bring in a guy like Soler. Why not? I mean, Ronnie Mauricio ideally could potentially turn into that threat, but it's not going to happen next season. So if the Mets are really looking to contend and compete next season, they're going to have to get one of these guys. And I don't think anybody's as perfect as a Shohei Ohtani or Juan Soto. But like I said, speaking uncertainties and, as it relates to those types of guys, it's just not something that I want to do as we inch forward to the real thing. And you have the dates here in terms of when the winter meetings start. So look out for all these guys that, are flying under the radar. and hopefully David Stearns can work some magic. But I really am interested to see what the Washington Nationals are going to do, because that's an up and coming roster, and they have a lot of those guys that they could definitely offload. Oh, I forgot to mention, speaking of Baltimore Orioles, Anthony Santander is another guy. He's one of those guys that is very feasible. I mean, he's set to be their highest paid player at 12, almost $13 million a year. Can you believe that? That is absolutely insane. He's about to make $13 million, and he's going to be the highest paid player on the Baltimore Orioles. And that might be the reason they're offloading him, or they could offload him. So, yeah, it's fun to talk about all these names, but I really want to see what an organization like the White Sox has to offer and what their plan is. I know, Nelson mentioned a team like the Cardinals, who massively underperformed expectations. Let's see how far or how quickly they want to rebuild. And the Washington Nationals as well. I don't think it's that far out there to sort of envision a trade between the Mets and the Nationals. I can't remember the last time it's happened, but
2015, I think.
was it 2015? Yeah. So, yeah, so it's certainly not out of the realm, but I wouldn't expect it. But yeah, that's what I got in terms of trade targets. I know there's more that I'm missing. I'm just throwing out, the 5, 6 names I do remember, but it's going to be an interesting offseason, not only free agent wise, but trade target wise as well. And everybody wants to talk about Corbin Burns. We all get it. We all would want Corbin Burns here. I don't know, with, like you said, the Brandon Woodruff situation, especially now with him potentially missing all 2024 season. I don't know if it's that feasible anymore, especially with the relationship. Certainly, that's probably hindered between the Brewers and the Mets already, in terms of the owner not liking Steve Cohen, but also the David Stern situation and how that all came to fruition. So we'll see what happens. I hope David Stearns can work some magic, and this roster is going to be going under a revamp, to say the least. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that situation. You got to look for teams like the White Sox, the disappointing Cardinals, teams that, thought they would be competitive and tried for it, but didn't really get anywhere. Yariel brought a good point in the chat, and I was going to bring it up, but Cody Bellinger, the reason why I think the Mets might go after him is 2 reasons. Number one, yeah, he might get a pretty damn good deal, but I think he's the type of guy that I think just didn't. I just think it was just not working out the way it should have been with the Dodgers, and I think a change of scenery did help him with Chicago. Yeah, it's understandable that he did it for 1 year, and that's worrisome. But he is a former MVP, and the reason why I say Cody Bellinger is the fact that it's a backup plan just in case Pete Alonso actually is not a New York Met. And I'm not talking about just the Mets will trade Pete Alonso this offseason. I'm talking about if Pete Alonso really wants $300+ million and not budging off of that, or a 10-year deal and not budging off of that. I think that the Mets need a backup plan. I know they were talking about, there was some talk about Parada moving to first base this minor league season going into next year. He might start playing some first base. And I think in college he played some first base, so he's familiar with that. But to have Cody Bellinger as a backup plan, he can play all 3 outfielder positions and a very good first base. That's an interesting situation that the Mets have to look at, because you can't, hold what in your hand if Pete Alonso decides he wants $300 million and is not budging with Boris as his agent, and you get stuck with losing Pete Alonso because you don't want to give him 10 years, $300 million, which, there might be a stupid team out there that actually would pay him that much. And, teams you can see it, like the Yankees, the Giants, teams like that can actually go after a guy like that and probably pay him that type of money if they really need to get Chris.
I have a question for you guys, for the panel here. Glasnow from the Rays, he's set to make $25 million. I know, Nelson, I get the history, but he could be on the market. I don't know. 25 million is steep. I know the history there. Another guy that you could probably buy low on from the Braves is Soroka, if they decide to, but I don't know. Glasnow is a name that intrigued me. So
well, Nelson seems like he's very ready for that move. Nelson,
I hate both of those options. Just no. Glasnow is literally, the glass is in his name. He's made of glass. He cannot stay healthy. He just can't. He just can't stay healthy. Soroka, he's barely pitched, I think, in the last few years. Nah, I don't want to take risk on guys like that. We've had enough guys that can't stay on the field. I'm done with that. I need guys that I can rely on, and I can't rely on either of those guys. So I'm out. Please, no, God, no. Just no.
Yeah, I understand that, and I saw easy BX Yankees gonna go heavy after Bellinger. Well, yeah, I mean they probably need him more than the Mets, but you know what? Steve Cohen can buy anybody he needs. If he wants him, he'll get him. It's just that simple. But yeah, and that's the way it goes when it comes. What I thought I saw somebody brought up Bellinger, and I was thinking actually my dad brought that up earlier about when we were talking, and we just happened to talk baseball a little bit. He brought up Bellinger, thinking about the whole Pete Alonso situation. So kudos to my dad on that one. But Kim Ng, if you haven't heard, there was a mutual option between her and the Marlins about coming back, and she declined. The Marlins wanted her back, and she declined her mutual option, and now she's a free agent. And you know, Nelson, we brought it up in the chat earlier, the group chat. I believe it was Nelson. You said somebody said about Boston being like a president of baseball ops, president, and all that stuff. But Kim Ng is interesting. Kim Ng can be an interesting candidate for GM. I don't know if she wants to make that lateral movement, but I mean, she will be getting an opportunity to actually put a payroll together and have resources, unlike what she did with the Marlins. She made great trades for the Marlins to get them into the playoffs. She made good moves. So bringing that knowledge, and she has a lot of experience with the Yankees as well under Brian Cashman. So she isn't. I think she's from Queens actually. So bringing her back home might be an option if she wants to go through that lateral movement. You know, she will be working under Stern. So, Chris, I'm going to start with you. What do you think about Kim Ng if she wants to make that lateral movement to the Mets as the GM with the same title? What do you think about that?
It could be a good move for her career-wise in the long term. I'm sure she's gonna get plenty of interest as, Nelson said earlier, for president of baseball operations considerations in other organizations, with the Red Sox presumably being at the top of the list. And the Red Sox are gonna be at the top of the list across the board, not only for her services, but also for Ohtani. That's a separate discussion. But the Mets gonna have to compete with the Red Sox here, on quite a few people. Now, I the reason why I say it would be a great lateral move for her is, if talks go through in other negotiations and there really isn't a fit for any sort of other organizations that bring her on as a Pobo, imagine the sort of breadth of expertise now that she has, and the source, the I guess the riches that she has to work with in terms of Steve Cohen. That's why we all said that David Stearns was presumably going to be taking the Mets job, is that it just becomes so much easier to work in the front office that has those sort of resources, in market that presumably players, some players might not want to come to the New York market, but most players would probably love to come to the New York market and play for the New York Mets. Presumably, we would hope, right? So if there is a potential for that, I know we talked about also a guy like Chaim Bloom, who's also on the market, how that could work with the David Stern sort of relationship there, situation. Now that Epler, had stepped down amidst the investigation, but no, she has done a phenomenal job in Miami. Her track record speaks for itself, and it was a very surprising sort of thing. It was surprising when I read Passan's tweet that, they wanted to hire a president of baseball operations above her, given, where she just took this team to. I mean, this playoff run, they've had the trades that went down, like you said. She has the track record. I'm sure she's going to get interest and considerations for that. But that lateral movement, if there's any job that you do take for that lateral movement, it would be the New York Mets, because they are building one of the strongest front offices in all of baseball right now. And, the farm system is one thing that you have to work with now that you didn't before. But now you have just absolute baseball masterminds surrounding you, and you add one more in Kim, and you're all set. So, like I said, I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately, just because she left Miami for a reason, and I just wouldn't see like that'd be kind of doing herself a disservice around the league. Like, oh, you left the Miami Marlins position and you're joining the Mets for the very reason why you left Miami. So it'll be interesting to see who ends up hiring her. Would be a very lucky team. I think, like I said, she's done some great things in Miami, but I can't even start to think of where the Mets are going to start in terms of this whole GM talk. I know someone said earlier, Carlos Beltran, that he said hell no to, Rob, but yeah, I have no idea where they start. But this is an interesting situation that I'm definitely keeping an eye out for. It was a surprise to me.
Yeah. And yeah, with the whole Beltran thing as GM, yeah. I mean, how many Met fans couldn't stand him as a player, and now all of a sudden they want him to be the manager, GM, president of baseball ops, and everything else? But yeah, I agree with you. It would be a good lateral movement for her, but we'll see what happens there. I'm assuming the Mets would interview her. I mean, it would only make sense. So Hayden, what do you think about Kim Ng?
Yeah, I mean, I think she would be an interesting person for the Mets. I guess kind of like everyone previously stated, I don't really think she would have any interest in going to the Mets, considering that we saw with Billy Epler, the reason he left was because he wouldn't have as much power as he used to. Obviously, David Stearns is going to be kind of the number one guy in that front office, no longer the GM. So, Kim Ng, big reason she left Miami, as they said, was because the Marlins are trying to get a president of baseball operations, which would put her second. So I think that's kind of going to be the deterrent for Ng to want to come to the Mets. I think she's a very intelligent GM. I mean, you saw what she did for this Miami Marlins team this year. I mean, they were a team that was either going to be hit or miss. People could see them winning 90 games or losing 90 games. And I think they had like 85, 84, something like that, which is really, really good. I mean, their drafts have been doing very well. She was only GM for 1 year or 2 years. We'll say she was 2 years. I mean, the drafts she did have been phenomenal. Call-ups were great. I mean, organization of the minor leagues have been great. And I live in Florida, so, I spent a lot of time in, single A and Jacksonville or triple A in Jacksonville, excuse me, single A and Jupiter, going to Marlins games. So, they're definitely a respectable team, and I think it'll be interesting to see what approach they go for their future GM. But Kim Ng, yeah, I've heard Boston is definitely a good team, and I mean, she could probably do great things to Boston. Very intelligent person. I wouldn't be against her coming to the Mets, but I don't think she would want to, considering that she doesn't want to be the number 2 person in the front office.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely see for sure. Nelson, what do you think about Kim Ng, and do you think she might do that lateral movement to the Mets?
Obviously, she's a great candidate for the reasons that both guys have already said. I don't see it either, and honestly, nobody's looking at it from the Mets' perspective of why they may not want her. We've been through 4 or 5, however many GMs in a few years. Like, this is a lady that's probably wants to move up in her career. Yeah. Do you hire her knowing that she gonna want out of here like as probably as soon as possible? Like, I don't know that's you want to do the GM search all over again in a year or two. So that would be a reason for the Mets to hesitate. Obviously, there's rules about whether they would allow her permission and all that, but I mean, if a team wants her for a president job, I don't see how you could say no if you're the Mets, if she is on your GM. So I don't know. It just doesn't seem to fit. Like, obviously she's a great candidate. I'd love it if it happened, but I just don't see the fit. I'd love to be wrong though, because obviously she's done great things in Miami, with Stearns as a kind of like a mentor and whatnot, and Cohen's money, you could obviously see great things happening here, but it just doesn't seem to be the right. It's the wrong timing, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, that is true. The timing seems to kind of be off, and at some point she clearly probably wants to move up, and she probably was pissed at the Marlins not giving her the opportunity to be the president of baseball ops. and make her own GM. And I don't think she probably wants to work underneath anybody anymore. So that kind of makes sense when it comes to what she wants. But again, she's a great baseball mind, and you can tell with the move she made with the Marlins as GM. So we'll see how that goes. So the last topic of the day is about Craig Counsell. And it seems like everybody believes that Craig Counsell is going to be the guy. And I'm not sure everybody's opinion about Craig Counsell. Again, I know a lot of people don't like the fact that we say, oh, well, what has he won? That's the way I see it as. I'm not saying that, you could find a World Series, manager that wins. I mean, Bruce Bochy was out there and the Texas Rangers were able to get him. Not saying that the Mets are going to have a lot of candidates that actually won. Most available former managers are failed managers. So it's something that we would have to look at. But do you guys agree that Craig Counsell's probably going to be the guy? And if not, or is, do you think it would be the right move in your opinion? Chris, I'm going to start with you when it comes to Counsell. Do you think he's going to be the next manager? And would you want him or would you want to go elsewhere?
Yeah, that track record, it speaks for itself. We've said it on Interstate all the time with Nelson and I. I get the concerns in terms of the Brewers always choking in the playoffs, but I think the relationship is already established there with David Stearns. It really is about what Craig Counsell wants, though. There have been reports saying that he might step down as obviously manager and just not manage at all next season. I do think he's the guy. I do think that David Stearns, I think he said in his press conference, his introductory press conference, that, he doesn't really know where he's going to go with the manager just yet. But I think, that's just a blind statement. I think that he really does want to reunite with Craig Counsell. The relationship is already there, but who knows what he is really thinking. It's going to be interesting in terms of it's not Craig Counsell. I know we've already had this whole discussion before, but Nelson brought up some great names as well. It is interesting that you just mentioned, though, Bruce Bochy, because we had this whole Buck Showalter debacle. I won't even say the debacle. It was a great 2022 season, failed 2023 season, and obviously that was the end of that. But it is sort of a debate now in terms of the strategy of how you hire your next, manager in this new age of baseball, right? So all of these candidates out there, you're talking about like Bruce Bochy for the Rangers, right? Who's doing a phenomenal job for the Rangers this season. You got Joe Maddon's name was thrown out there like last week, and everyone went into a hoopla because they don't want a 2.0 of Buck Showalter in terms of like an older manager leading this presumably younger team. So Espada is a good guy to sort of throw out there. A guy like, it's sort of like a cliche to talk about bench coaches of different teams, like your Pat Murphys, your Don Kellys for the Pirates. It's a cliche to throw their names out there because it's like, it's really hard for me to judge from an outsider perspective how experienced and how respected they really are in terms of their current or, within their current organization. Because, I don't know that. I don't think any one of us knows that. I mean, we can only assume that Espada's a great candidate because he's learned under AJ Hinch and Dusty Baker for so long. But do we really know what the ins and outs of the Astros organization are, how the relationships are being formed there from a player to coach perspective? Like, we don't know that. We have a great bench coach, or we did. No, he is a bench coach. Is he a bench coach? Anyways, Eric Chavez internally, he was the hitting coach. Obviously, the role was relinquished this season. And that's a whole different discussion as well. Internally, I don't think the Mets hire internally, unfortunately, for Eric Chavez's sake. Because I would love to see that happen, but it really is such an interesting strategy. But I do think Craig Counsell is the guy at the end of the day, whether, Stearns wants to admit that right, or not, reveal his cards or whatever it may be. That is certainly something that whether Mets fans like it or not, there's two sides of the fence, like you said, Rob, whether you're scared about the Brewers' track record, you can have two sides of the fence. We talked about it. It's either the Brewers have made these playoffs all these years, they just haven't put it together in the playoffs, or they've choked in the playoffs, and that's Craig Counsell's fault. However you want to see it, I'm comfortable with the Mets bringing on Craig Counsell. I think that's who it'll be as long as Craig Counsell is willing to manage next season.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that comment right there. But people are talking about how like Buck Showalter, the new age of baseball kind of passed him by, which I don't believe because Bruce Bochy is older, didn't pass him by. Even Rob Thompson, it's not like he's 35, 40 years old. Rob Thompson's in his mid 50s, and even Dusty Baker. These guys are up there. These are not, young guys, new school managers. They're old school guys. I mean, except for the Arizona manager, Livolo, he's the only one that's in his early 40s, mid 40s. So, the new age of coaching, and I don't believe coaching is as big as it used to be and important as it used to be, but there's still something to that gut decision that you probably have to make every now and then. And I think there's no mistake that 3 out of the 4 remaining teams have managers that are old school type of managers. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. So we'll see how that goes. So Hayden, what do you think about do you think Counsell is going to be the manager? And if not, who do you think it will be?
Yeah. I mean, considering you brought in David Stearns, it was kind of alluded that everyone was saying that Stearns would want to bring in his guys. So kind of alluded to that it would be Craig Counsell. It's been a little. I will say, when it comes to the managerial search, it's been kind of quiet for the Mets. The Giants have been talking with a couple of guys. The Angels have been talking with a couple of guys. So, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing that the Mets managerial search has been kind of quiet. Yeah, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but I guess overall, I mean, right now, hard to tell. I would say, Craig Counsell seems to be one of the few favorited guys. We've gone over past episodes, some guys, with me, my mentality is I like a mix. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they have to be 35 or, oh, they have to be 70. I don't really think age is relevant. I get it. Baseball's going younger, so they kind of want the younger managers. I mean, you don't want, Tony La Russa, who's, 85 years old, managing your ball team. Yeah, I think that's kind of an issue. But, if you have a mixture of old school mentality and new mentality consisting of analytics and the old school consisting of the old school style of baseball, that's fine. I'll take that. And I think Craig Counsell is a good representation of that. I think he offers a good mix. I mean, he knows how to handle an elite rotation, an elite bullpen. And I mean, for what he has, obviously, he can only do so much being the manager in Milwaukee. Obviously, people say, oh, they've been in the playoffs 4 years in a row. What have they done? Well, I mean, Craig Counsell unfortunately can't sign players. That's not his job. He can only do the in-game stuff. And from the in-game stuff, I mean, he's kind of done his job. A lot of that's more the higher ups. So, for what he had, I mean, for having an offense for the last couple years that weren't really that great. I mean, Yelich got better, but I mean, name me some offensive stars on the Brewers. My point exactly. And the fact is that they still got to the playoffs, pretty impressive. So I think Craig Counsell could be a nice guy for the Mets. It's really going to come to a surprise. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a surprise candidate. I mean, you see in baseball now, nobody expected Rob Thompson to really do well once Joe Girardi stepped down. There's just managers out there that just come in and surprise everyone. And who knows? If it's not Counsell, maybe it'll be that surprise person. But as of right now, I would like it to be Craig Counsell. Alex Cora, I know people have discussed in the past. I've heard mixed things about. I think a lot of it was Chaim Bloom, not necessarily him that destroyed that organization. So, I guess those are two kind of good guys. I don't know. I just kind of feel like it's it's the same repetitive stuff. I feel like I was just sitting here 2 years ago saying the same thing. So, when it comes to managers, there's not a lot of like great guys that are out there, but there's about 5 or 6 adequate guys and maybe 1 or 2 really good guys that you could take from.
Yeah, I do agree, and we talk about it as well when it comes to that. But look at Snicker with the Braves, right? He's old, as well. So, and when it comes down to it, I think there's certain managers that can handle a star-studded lineup and star-studded roster, like a Dave Roberts, who continues to fail with the Dodgers and his bullshit 2020 World Championship, which is not a real championship. So it's going to be very interesting. You know, the council situation I think is going to happen, but we'll see how that one goes. So Nelson, what do you got on the council situation?
I can live with it if that's the call. I don't think it's as cut and dry as people make it out. People seem to forget, and David Stearns inherited Council as a manager in Milwaukee. He didn't get to hire him. So I don't know. I mean, he may not care, but I would think he might, in his first opportunity to hire a guy, would want to hire someone new and not just bring in the guy that he's worked with for however many years. I know there's the obvious connection there, and there's a comfort level there with having a guy that you know, but it's a new situation, new job, new city. He might want to go outside the box, and to Hayden's point, he might be somebody that we're not even thinking of. I've done quite a few looks into multiple guys. There's a few candidates I'd be interested in. As for the bench coach thing, that comment that Chris made, it's just an obvious. If you don't have managerial experience, bench coach is like the next best thing. So they tend to get hired before everybody else just because they're the right-hand man to the manager. So, but you could see, I mean, Mike Schilt's name's been out there. He did well with the Cardinals. Obviously, he had some issues with analytics and whatnot, but people can change. Maybe he's willing to buy in a little more now. Cora's probably not going to happen. I wouldn't mind, but I know some people hate the Beltran idea. I don't mind it. I think he's a great baseball mind. I like him. Even if he's not a manager, I like him. I like the idea of him being involved in the organization one way or another. Ray Montgomery, who just was the Angels bench coach, I think, this past season, he's an interesting choice. He's a New York guy. Has ties to Stearns as well. There's multiple names. I don't want to see a guy like Ron Washington. I've heard his name thrown out there. Joe Madden. I don't want to go down that route of old managers again. Sorry. I know they, like you said, Bochy's done a good job, Dusty, whatnot. I'd prefer someone a little younger. I want a guy that we can kind of build with and will hopefully be here for a long time. These older managers are not it for me, but we'll see what happens. It's super quiet on that front, which would lead you to believe that it might be Stearns just because he can't, I guess, talk to anybody till after October 31st. But that also opens up the possibility that it's not Stearns necessarily and just a guy that's working for one of these teams that are still in it, because they can't really talk to anybody at this point. So that Espada obviously still in it with the Astros. I don't know too many names with the Rangers, but you never know. A guy from the Rangers staff, Philly staff, even the Diamondback staff, that could be hot names just because of their stature getting into the playoffs and whatnot. So anything's possible. We shall see what happens.
Yeah, that is true. So we'll definitely see. Again, I wouldn't mind Beltran. I think a first-time manager is a dangerous game to play. And you know, I would even be okay with a bench coach that has been a bench coach for a while. Again, we talked about Pat Murphy, who is the guy that was with Craig Counsell. A guy like that, somebody who's been in the dugout and that knows the in and outs of everything, and can handle a clubhouse as well. A first-time manager, I think, is a dangerous game to play. I think that for a team that hasn't really shown the mental toughness, I think you're going to need a strong-willed guy that's been there before. And if Counsell is the guy, I'll be okay with that. But you just never know. Sometimes it could be a crapshoot, and you just get lucky. But it comes down to the players on the field. Let's be honest about that. You got talent. You got the right guys. They hit in big spots. They pitch in big spots. it can make the manager look like a genius, right? Dusty Baker was considered a failed manager who couldn't win the big game, and he has a talented Astros team, and he won a World Series. So it was that Dusty Baker, or was it the players on the field? So I think it's a combination, but the players on the field matter probably more nowadays. So Hayden, we're gonna finish it up with the final thoughts. Whatever you got to say about the Mets and what's going to be going on with your channel in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, Mets Talk with Hayden is the name. Not really much to talk about with the Mets. Like I said, we kind of summarized all that I really had to say. Good to be here. Apologies if I was a little quiet. I have a horrible headache this week, so it's been a pain. But otherwise, yeah, I'm gonna try and be a little bit more active. I did do 2 videos, as I stated previously. I'm going over the Mets season recap and then going over the front office moves. Like I said, I've just been very busy with a lot of things slammed. So, like I said, once I get a little bit more time under my belt around the holidays, I'll be back home. So I'll have a little bit more time under my belt, and maybe I'll do a lot of free agent stuff, trade rumors, all of that great stuff that we all enjoy in the off season. So that's really all I got. Mets Talk with Hayden is the name. Like, comment, subscribe. LFGM. Appreciate 3 of you guys on here, and then everyone in the chat that chimed in. And yeah, let's go Mets.
Yeah, as you were talking, Kyle Schwarber hits a leadoff home run to give the Phillies a 1-0 lead. My God,
Phillies are a good team.
Yeah, they'll probably sweep the fucking Diamondbacks because we love misery. The Met fans can't get. Oh wow, that's another home. Oh okay, never mind. Sorry, fuck the Phillies. Chris, final thoughts and whatever else you got to say about the Mets, buddy, and your channel.
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate y'all, having me on. Rob, thank you for hosting. This is awesome to do once. I mean, maybe not. I'm down to do it every week. I know last week was a crapshoot, but as updates come out, especially into some of these dates that you have here in the off season, will be very important to be talking about, keeping everyone updated. So, awesome stuff happening. I'm talking Mets on my channel, talking Rangers, Giants. I got a Giants podcast tomorrow, Feeling Blue, coming out, discussing the misery that is being a Giants fan, talking Rangers on Wednesday. So a bunch of stuff. Knicks season coming up. I think the Knicks and Rangers have to be my saving grace for my sports fandom, because the Mets and Giants have absolutely killed me this year. So we'll see what happens. Subscribe to the channel at CPNY Sports. I'm over on X and Instagram, same handle at CPNY Sports. Appreciate you guys, and looks like the Phillies got another home run. All right. I appreciate it. Good night, everyone, and we'll see what the Mets bring us this offseason. Hopefully Christmas comes early.
Yeah, Christmas is definitely coming for the Phillies. Nelson, final thoughts. What's up with the channel, and anything else you need to say?
Yeah, no, appreciate you having us on and hosting the show. Great to talk to you guys as always. Feel like we got a good little crew here. As far as on the channel, please subscribe to the channel. I'm at Amish Country Mets fan. Over on X, it's at Amish Country Met if you want to follow me over there. On the channel, as soon as the hot stove gets kicking, I'm going to be pumping out way more content, talking about any rumors and whatnot, what have you. Obviously, I have the show with Chris. Probably won't be doing it as often, but if any news breaks, we're definitely going to be doing it. The Interstate Mets Report. And then I've been doing this, I don't know what you want to call it, a series or whatever. I'm just breaking down managerial candidates before we hire someone. I think I'm going to transfer that over and do them on video as well and put them on YouTube. I've been doing that on X, so look out for that. And yeah, any breaking news, anything happens, I'll be up there just as much as any of you guys. I'm sure Rob is always on there. Rob's on there more than any of us. He's always got something going on. So yeah, thank you guys. Check everybody out. Thank you everybody that watched tonight, and have a great night, everybody. Let's go Mets.
Absolutely. So subscribe to all the channels, guys. They do good work. They're knowledgeable, obviously. When it comes to my channel, I do the off-season report on Thursday. Obviously, the Mets Roundtable with you guys. Me and Hayden with the Shea Bridge Show, we're going to start getting that going again. For some reason, I just been completely busy on Sundays. It's just been hectic the last couple of weeks. And, to have back-to-back days of shows when, it's kind of hard doing back-to-back days shows, and I've been busy on Sunday, so it's my fault, not Hayden's fault. It's been my fault. So subscribe to all the channels, guys. Everybody, thank you for tuning in to another Mets Roundtable in this soon-to-be very important offseason for the New York Mets. So with that said, everybody have a great night. Let's go Mets. We'll see you next time, guys. Have a great night. Good night, guys.
Let's go Mets.
Peace.